Before I start painting translucent flowers, I will show you the basic watercolor techniques that you will need in this class. There are some warm-up exercises that will help you develop the ability to feel your brush, paper, and after that you can paint more confidently with watercolor. I will show you the gradient technique, layering, wet on wet and wet on dry technique, and after that I'll paint the simple flower by mixing these techniques. This block is the basis for working with the following blocks. If you are a beginner, I highly recommend you study this part. I use this square paper block for painting. If you use a separate paper sheet, stick it on a table or other surface with tape. Divide the paper sheet into 4 parts. The top right is the part for the practice of gradient fills. Bottom right for practice layering. Bottom left, place for wet on wet and wet on dry technique. And on the top left, I'll paint a flower. Let's get started. In this block I will use 2 colors, blue and violet shades from the Odyssey watercolor set. The first technique that I will show you is gradient fill. Gradient fill is a smooth transition from one color to another. First, let's make the transition from one color to its lighter shade. I start to paint in blue color using a solution with a lot of pigment. Then gradually I add more and more water. You must use enough water that the colors mix well. The painting area should not be dry. You can keep the paper sheet tilted so that the water flows down. As a result, I have an area with a smooth color transition. Using the same principle, I make the second gradient fill. I start to paint in blue color and gradually add a little amount of purple. Then I continue to paint and add more and more purple and less blue. And at the end of this painting area, I paint in purple. Don't forget that the painting area should be wet enough. This allows the colors to mix well. So, we finished the gradient fill exercise. I hope you did it well. You can also experiment with different colors. Remember, the more practice you have, the more confident you will be in watercolor painting. The next exercise is layering. I'll paint with a special kind of brush named flat brush. It will be very convenient for creating wide strokes, but you can paint with any brush. You should focus on the main thing of this exercise, understanding the layering principle. I begin to paint strokes with a light color solution of watercolor paint. I start with the blue color. In the process, I alternate the direction, position and color of the strokes. After the first layer has dried, I begin the second layer using a more vibrant paint solution. I paint the brush strokes according to the same principle, alternating the position and color of the strokes. Please remember that the vibrant solution remains transparent anyway, and when the brush strokes intersect with each other, you can see layering effect. Another important watercolor technique that you will need in this lesson is the wet on wet and wet on dry technique. This is the main principle for creating translucent watercolor effect. So let's draw some circles. 2 separate circles and 2 pairs of circles that intersect with each other. Let's start paint with the first circle. Using a large brush, I cover the circle with clean water. Then, while the circle is still wet, I add a few drops of blue paint around the edges using a thin brush. If the painting area is too wet, you can remove excess water with a paper towel or cotton pad. I fill the next circle with a light solution of blue color, and then, while the circle is still wet, I add a few drops of purple color at the edges and in the middle. As a result, I get a soft framed watercolor circles. Let's move on to the next exercise. I cover the next circle with a light paint solution, and while the painting area is still wet, I cover the next circle with a different color. Look what a smooth transition I got. All this exercise showed perfectly how the wet on wet principle works. The following exercise will show us how works wet on dry principle. I cover the first circle with a blue color solution. Now I wait until this circle dries, and then I will cover the second circle. As a result, I got a beautiful multi-layering effect. We have finished the warming up part of the exercise. All these exercises and their combinations will help you create beautiful illustration of translucent watercolor flowers.